Hello everyone, welcome into Create Smarter. I'm your host Tyler Pyburn from 5 Tool Productions. Now first and foremost, thank you all so much for joining us. Now if you've followed us in the past, you may have seen this before. If not, no problem at all, because we're basically starting from scratch all over again. Now our goal with this show in particular is to keep you up to date with what's going on in the world of events, marketing, video production, how the three are really intertwined with one another at this point. Now one of the cool things is that you're going to see some new faces on the team, and really the look and feel of the show as a whole will just continue to evolve over time. But we can't do that without you. Now, it doesn't matter what platform you're watching on right now, which is likely Facebook, but let us know what you want to see and hear more about. Now, one thing that has definitely changed since we last had a show, we've grown. Now, I mentioned before, we have some new faces. If you haven't already, you'll begin to see a few of those on our social channels with new members of the team, or as I've said in the past, more folks aboard the pirate ship. I know everybody's laughing at me in the background because of that. It's all good. It's welcome. Now, with all these people joining the team, we figured out pretty quickly that we were going to need a bigger space. So we did. We upgraded. We took out a wall, and now we have a much bigger space. So with all that in mind, why don't we get started with a tour of the new office by one of our newest employees, Connor Clarity.
Hey guys, it's Connor from 5 Tool Productions. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of the office to see what's going on. Let's go! And here we are in the lobby. It's where we come in and start our day, hang our coats up. Sorry about the big mess, but come over here. As you come this way, we're at the edit bays. We have 2 edit bays with computers full of the entire Adobe Creative Cloud. This right here is Phil and Tyler's office. It's where all the head honchos talk and do their big work, answer emails, and Zoom calls.
Hello everybody. Yeah, this is our office, still putting everything together. As you tell, big mess and still an awful lot of BU garb from Phil.
And this right here is our conference room. It's where we have all our meetings and sit-downs, and even eat a little bit when you're, in between projects. Right now we actually use it as a multi-purpose room for a shoot this past week. That's why you see a bunch of paper on the walls, so we can do that as well. And this right here is our control room 2. Josh, you want to give us a little rundown of what you do here? That'd be great.
Sure, Connor. So, welcome to Control Room 2. We've got our Stream Dude PC connected to vMix here. But it's also just sort of where I work, so I got my hard drive management project going, got Photoshop up on my laptop. It's kind of my little corner. It's not always mine, but it's where I usually spend most of my days.
And this room is what we call the Zoom room. It's where we have 6 to 8 independent computers where we can pull in clients and guests before a live stream or meeting, and we can cut them together seamlessly to make our video conferences look even better and crisp. And if you come in this way, we got control room number 1. And look, it's our good friend Josh again. Josh, why don't you give us a little rundown of what goes on in this room?
Oh, hey again, Connor. So yes, this is Control Room 1. This is, before Control Room 2 was a glint in our eyes. This was where all the magic happened. So once again, we have a custom Stream Dude PC running vMix to stream. This Stream Dude is pretty nice. It's not just the PC, it's also a router. So we can sort of route all of our video outputs and inputs throughout the office. So a couple of hardware solutions here. We also have good old mixing board, which I believe the Stream Deck 1 kind of feeds into for our audio, as well as the Zoom computer. So if we're doing a bunch of stuff out there on the Zoom laptops, this is sort of where the mother brain for all of that is.
Alright, if you come over here, we have our main recording studio. And this is Phil. Phil, why don't you give us a little rundown of what goes on in this room?
Yeah, absolutely. This is our main recording studio, as Connor mentioned. This is where we do live shows, also record on this set for certain clients, Tyler will host some shows from in here. We'll record, we have a couple of cameras set up that are wired to the whole office. So basically anytime we're recording something in the studio that we're going to use in a show or as part of a recording with a client, we'll start here. We'll record it from in here and beam it to one of the 2 control rooms that I know you visited on this tour as well. Send it all over the office and make it something cool.
All right, that about does it for our office tour today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks for coming along with me. Be sure to follow 5 Tool Productions on all the social medias and tune in for our live streams in the future. Thanks again. See you around.
Awesome stuff, Connor. Really appreciate you taking a tour of the office, and it's funny to see it through the eyes of other people, to be completely honest with you, because I just look at it and say, hey, this was a space that had a wall in between. Literally cut it out. Now we've got 2 spaces, which is pretty rad to see. So now that we've seen the space, let's go ahead and shift our focus a little bit and take a look at some of the news. Now, with the Super Bowl 50 being played earlier this month alongside the high-intensity plays and celebrity-filled commercials, we saw Twitter hold its 4th annual Brand Bowl. Now, this was the 4th installment of the social media event where Twitter tracks exposure, engagement of different brands. There's Super Bowl tie-in advertisements on its platform. Now, this year, Pepsi took home its 3rd Brand Bowl trophy as the MVP. Apparently, it's easier to win a 3rd MVP trophy in the Brand Bowl than it is in the Super Bowl, but pretty cool. Then the ad campaign now centered around the halftime show featuring The Weeknd, so that obviously helped gain them hype and attention, even if it did cause a ton of motion sickness. Now they also named the winner for the No TV Touchdown Award, which is given to the best ad campaign that did not feature a commercial during the big game. Now this year's winner was actually Budweiser. I know it's hard to believe. They usually have a national TV spot during featuring their iconic Clydesdale horses. However, this year they didn't actually spend the millions of dollars to have something in the Super Bowl itself, and they really solely relied on the hashtag Eyes on the Clyde to create a conversation between fans as well as promote a contest to win a retro fridge stocked with beer. Sounds pretty good to me. Now, other awards were given to T-Mobile for most retweets, Disney Plus for most engagement on a video, and Verizon for using their ad campaign to reach beyond the digital world of Twitter. It just goes to show how the power of social media, when used as an advertising tool in the all-digital age we now live in. Now, we see examples like this every day where a brand will turn to social media to reach a wide audience while saving money on advertising at the same time, not spending a couple $1 billion on an advertisement. Now, staying with the NFL for just a moment, Fox Sports used the NFL playoffs to debut a groundbreaking video element to primetime TV. Now, in the playoff game between the Rams and the Seahawks, or just the game, between the Rams and the Seahawks, we got the first look at a handheld 4K camera being used to tape players on the sidelines. Now, Sport Video Group's digital director, Brandon Costa, explains in a tweet that Fox opted not to use traditional sideline broadcast equipment and instead chose to use a film-grade Sony mirrorless camera on a handheld gimbal, which, believe it or not, is actually fairly similar to what we use on site for our shoots itself. So just a newer version and maybe a little bit better quality. Now, this actually delivered never seen before ultra crisp footage that, when compared to the normal broadcast footage, looks something out of a video game almost. Mixed reviews, but still the technology was met with high praise as clips from the sideline footage and touchdown celebrations went really just viral on Twitter, while some viewers, critiqued it for the jarring and film-like depth of field look, really. Now, 2 weeks after the camera's debut, CBS tried to mimic the new look with their own Steadicam, but with the operator manually adjusting focus instead of the cinema-level autofocus used at Fox. Now, a similar technology to Fox's was also used by fellow sport broadcasters ESPN only a month later, while broadcasting to a UFC pay-per-view as well. Now, Fox has said the camera is still in really the experimental phases, but it's only a matter of time before we see just insanely high-quality footage being used in more mass broadcast environments, and who knows, maybe some point in the consumer level as well. It'd be pretty cool to see it if I can get my hands on it, but probably costs a pretty penny. Now, meanwhile, we've seen the COVID-19 pandemic create new challenges for many companies, both big and small. However, some businesses in this new normal have become really a positive in a sense. Now, this was the case for Domino's. Yes, Domino's Pizza, who had a strong 2020 being helped by the rise of people staying home and ordering a ton of pizza. Delivery orders up 12% in Q3. Now, the increase in online orders from customers staying in and working from home saw Domino's have a rapid transformation to a digital business in terms of how how it operates and communicates with customers, and really how customers interact with the brand through their online ordering system as a whole. Now, because of this transformation, CMO Sarah Barron combined the marketing and digital communications department into one single hive mind of creative digital marketing. Now, this way, they could pool more resources to create new and engaging ways for customers to order online while promoting growth and increasing sales. Now, Barron states that this new focus on digital will support increased digital investment and increase brand love among customers. I mean, everybody loves pizza, right? In order to take advantage of the lack of in-person business. Now, this might seem like kind of the norm for smaller companies for the digital team and marketing team to really kind of work together. But with the large enterprise-sized companies, the two departments really just operate in silos. Now, we'll have to see if more companies follow suit and begin rethinking their internal departments to adapt to these changes as a whole. We'll see what happens. So that's the news. Now, there's no denying an awful lot of news is being shared on social right now. Now, we're going to stay away from the whole fake news topic for the day. But one thing we do want to dive into is how this constant creation and consumption world that we live in has really affected journalists. Now, we came across a great blog post by the Poynter Institute that covered this topic pretty well. We figured we'd take it one step further and go really straight to the source. Our newest employee, Marissa Yaleski, caught up with NBC 10 Boston's Alysha Palumbo to talk through the idea of journalists as content creators.
When we were talking about the emergence of content creators and what that means for traditional journalism and the news media, I wanted to ask you what you think emerging technologies and social media platforms, how they've changed traditional news as a whole.
Well, I mean, I think that there's obviously more competition out there. So we have to be ready for it. It's not just, your 3 stations in a market or 5 stations in a market and 2 newspapers. Now you've got all these other content creators who are out there. They're at crime scenes, they're at press conferences, and they're getting the information to people in different ways than we used to. And they have their own audience. And so we, in what you might call the traditional news media, have had to kind of adapt. I think our web department has probably had to adapt more than those of us out in the field, because we're kind of funneling it back into the station. But we've definitely had to kind of think about things in a different way. When you're covering a story, you get to the scene, you've got to be getting a photo and some information in quickly, because you may have someone next to you who doesn't have the same deadline of a live shot at noon that you may have, and they're going to be putting that information out there, and they're going to be reaching those viewers faster. So by the time you get on TV, sometimes it's old news.
So now, do you think that there has been more of a blurred line between what's considered professional journalism versus your everyday content creation, or do you think there's still that stark separation between the two?
I think that we, in, again, the traditional news media, may think that it's obvious the difference between someone who's a professional and someone who's a blogger. But I think the consumer doesn't necessarily see the difference. And I think we saw that, especially over the past 5 years or so. Everything was turned into fake news, and there was this huge campaign to turn your traditional media sources into fake news, and at least get that opinion out there that they're not credible. And so that's been detrimental to us. And it has, on the other hand, leveled the playing field a bit between, your traditional journalism sources and those who are trying to start out and get news out there in a non-traditional format or in a non-traditional way. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I do think that the news consumers have gotten more savvy over the past, year or two, when there's been kind of this pushback now from journalists, from those in the national media, local media, saying, look, here's why you should trust us. We actually finally realized as an institution that we need to earn people's trust and gain people's trust back that we've lost. And I think it's probably a valuable lesson as we move forward, that we don't just assume everyone trusts what we're saying. We have to actually educate them as to why they should believe what we're telling them, and why they should believe whatever source we're speaking with or whomever we're interviewing, why they're credible. So I think it's kind of held our feet to the fire a little bit more, that we're not just going to have people automatically trust everything that we're reporting. We have to work a little bit harder.
So how do you think that differs from the trust that people put in these other platforms? Like in the article that we both read, they were talking about how massive amounts of people are seeking their daily news and information on platforms like YouTube and Snapchat and Instagram and all those. So do you think there's a danger in trusting the content that's posted there versus your content in the traditional news?
I do think there is personally. I mean, obviously I have my own set of biases I enter into that question with. But I am concerned with how the lines have been blurred and how people are so quick to believe whatever they read, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or just on YouTube or in a Google search. There's been a huge problem with people taking advantage of the general public's willingness to believe anything that they read online. I feel like there is a segment of the population that has started to really investigate where they're getting their news from, but I also think that there's a group of people who don't care and they don't want to actually know where that information is coming from. They want to confirm their own biases, and so that's become a little bit of a problem. And I think there are a lot of sources that either on purpose or just by the sheer nature of the fact that they don't have a whole editing staff in there looking over their product ahead of time or kind of pushing them to look at things from different angles, they may be putting out news, quote unquote, that is really not that reputable. And then you've got people believing it and sharing it and sending it to their family and friends, and then more and more people believe it. And that's kind of the cycle we've gotten into with the actual fake news. That's been kind of a battle from a journalism standpoint.
So kind of how you were talking about how you're competing with these everyday content creators now and the dangers of what people believe and what they see. What do you think that competition looks like in terms of, is there a strict importance of making sure that you guys are getting the information to the general public first when somebody could just take out their phone and take a video of a crime scene like you were saying before?
So I think that there are some who have come out there and are actually doing good work on their own. I don't know if they'd consider themselves bloggers, but maybe photojournalists. There's actually a kid who's in high school who has really impressed me on social media in terms of just, he's got a camera, he wants to do this, and he's going out and he's reporting on things visually and then reporting on them over social media. And so that's what I love to see, is someone who's kind of taking the initiative with how inexpensive the equipment has gotten and getting out there and sharing the news. But then you might have someone else who just happens to live in that neighborhood, who's putting it out there, doesn't bother to check with, officials on the scene, and they're just putting out their best guess and people run with it. Going back to your question about timeliness, I mean, I think there is added pressure to get the information and the photos out there in a timely manner. But at the same time, we all kind of live in an echo chamber. I mean, on my phone, I have the apps of all, 5 stations. So I see all these alerts come in. I know who got it in there 1 minute before the other station. And I get that, you get competitive about that stuff. But your average viewer or your average person who's on their phone at work will see the alert and say, okay, now I know. They oftentimes don't even know where they heard it. So we get a little bit more into it than your average news consumer, I think. And so that, that's where we need to kind of step back and say, do people really care? It's just more important to get it out there and get it accurate before you just rush to get it out there first and then you've got it wrong.
Do you think there's still an existing importance of attending these prestigious and expensive journalism schools in this world of user-generated content? Should I be paying all this money to go to school and be a journalist?
That's a hard one, because I mean, I am very proud of where I went to school. I went to Syracuse University, the Newhouse School, and I thought my education was great. My husband went to a community college and then went to Specs Howard School of Broadcast Arts. And he's excellent. And he's a photographer, but he's so into news. And so I kind of look at the two, where he spent a fraction of the money that I spent to go to college and really a fraction of the time. And he was out there able to work and start earning money. And so I do feel like there's less of an emphasis on going to those big, expensive 4-year schools. I don't regret it at all. I loved my experience. And I think I learned a lot of what makes me the journalist I am today. But I do think if you're motivated and you're resourceful, you can easily break into this business and do well by finding a different path. I don't think that the path is as straight as it once was and as narrow as it once was. I do think that a lot of my colleagues have found a little bit more winding path to get here.
See, I'm a little bit biased. I agree with you because I also graduated from Syracuse in the Newhouse School, so I get that. And switching gears a little bit as well, I noticed that on your Twitter, and I follow other NBC reporters on Twitter, so you guys post videos and photos that kind of tease your packages and your live shots, encourage audiences to tune in at 5 o'clock or 5:30 or whenever your live shot is. Is that a recent adjustment that you've seen that you and all your other reporters have had to make in these coming years? Is that encouraged by the station as a whole?
It's actually kind of funny because we'll have, not over the past year or so, but every 18 months or so, we have someone come in with NBC, which is the company I work for, and they'll tell us, like, just based on algorithms and their research, what it makes the most sense to do in terms of, you know, whether it makes sense to be on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, TikTok, whatever. The irony I find is, you know, because I've been in this business a long time, is that they will tell us things that contradict year to year. So there was a time where they said, get away from Facebook, everything on Twitter, you got to break stuff on Twitter. And then the next time, or maybe 2 times later, they came in and said, Twitter's an echo chamber. It's only journalists and politicians. You need to go back on Facebook. Facebook is where it's at. And then Facebook keeps changing the algorithms. And so people aren't necessarily seeing what you're posting. So I just kind of try to put it out there so people are aware, hey, this is what I'm working on today. If it's breaking, I definitely will tweet more about it. But if it's just kind of your typical story of the day, which a lot of what we've been doing this past year has been, whether it's talking to medical experts or teachers or whomever, you know, I try to get a quote out there so people are intrigued to try to watch. And then I'll usually share the story afterwards. If it's something that hasn't been out there, you know, all day, I'll usually try to share the story as well, because sometimes that can gain traction as people who aren't watching the traditional newscasts, you know, are checking their phone and they're saying, oh, okay, I missed that story. Maybe I want to check it out. And then the web has much more prominence in terms of viewer hits, people going to the website, going to the app. And those are things that we're measuring a lot more than we ever did before.
So my final question to you is, do you think that the news will eventually lose out to these content creators and social media platforms?
I do think the pie is only so big, and, you know, you can only have so much of it for each station, for each reporter. And so I do think that we already are losing out and losing a section of our audience to those bloggers and those who are just going there with a cell phone and pretty much getting the same information and video out there that we are, with a big expensive camera on a live truck and, you know, whatever. So I do think we are losing out. And I think that that's why we're trying to get more creative. I mean, I'm not as involved in the behind the scenes stuff, but we have a big push for OTT, which is over the top. We're putting a lot of content on Roku and other streaming services. We've got NBCLX, where some of our stories will go, and they'll kind of go across the country, and then you can access that at any time. So we are trying to get creative. We can sometimes be the dinosaurs of journalism, where we take a lot longer than those just with their cell phone to actually get to that point of realizing this is where consumers are and this is where we need to be if we want to get them. So yeah, for a long-winded answer to your question, I do think that we are going to lose out a lot, and we're trying to keep our foothold. But I don't think that we're ever going to have the prominence that we had, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago, when everyone would sit down, have dinner, watch the evening news. It's just not, we're not going back to that. That's not society right now. And I don't think that's society in the future. So yeah, I do think that there's going to be a big change on the horizon, unfortunately, or fortunately, because it will push us to continue to compete with those content creators and try to up our game.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens, but I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. One of the things I love about that, as a person that worked in the news for a number of years, is we basically had a content creator interviewing someone that was a journalist and seeing that dynamic kind of play out. It was really cool. So Marissa, really good job on that. Good job putting it together and lining it up and coming up with all the excellent questions. So now, as I mentioned off the top of the show, really a lot has changed over the course of this last year for so many people out there. Now, honestly, when we first started doing this, we were kind of just figuring things out from a virtual world, what virtual events actually meant. But since then, things like virtual events, remote recording, virtual productions, one-on-one interviews, it's been a little bit crazy to say the least. And honestly, we've just learned a ton. Now, typically during this segment, what our plan and hope for is to be talking to someone that we've worked with, maybe a client, break down a specific project or show or event or interview. But we figured because we're just kind of coming back into the fold as a whole, why not talk in general about really what's taken place in the industry as a whole over the last year? So with that in mind, I figured let's bring in my counterpart here at 5 Tool Productions, Phil DiMartino, into the conversation to talk about how things have evolved. And Phil, how are you doing, my friend? I just saw you a couple minutes ago, but how's it going?
Never better, Tyler. Never better. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Phil, one of the things, a year ago, and I figured, well, let's just be candid with one another more than anything else. A little less than a year ago, I think it was March 5th, you and I were on the road back from Kentucky, and we were getting email after email after email saying our events, our shoots, a lot of things were going to be kind of called off and shut down or put on pause, actually, at that point in time. What was going through your mind other than let's get home from Kentucky and let's figure this out? But really, what's going through your mind when you start seeing everything kind of shut down? And, I'm happy to chime in too because it was interesting.
I was going to say, I think first and foremost, it was, where's the appropriate place to stop at a hotel in the middle of the night in order to actually sleep and not, be driving on zero rest in a giant truck. But no, I mean, it's a scary, interesting time to say the least. And obviously, looking back on it, I think the conversations back then were all about a couple of weeks shutdown. And, your first thought as a business owner, so many small business owners know, is just, what are we going to do in the very short term? But the problem was almost posed to us as a shorter term problem than obviously it ended up being. So when you mentioned postponements, I think that's the way a lot of people were looking at it. And obviously it's really completely shifted from the idea of, well, we need to just put things on hold for 2 weeks to completely fundamentally rethinking the way we present content and events. And, in retrospect, I feel really fortunate that you and I had kind of a background in live streaming that allowed us to approach this whole last year differently and gave us a starting point to think about how to deliver effective strategies for clients who came to us basically saying, we had an in-person event or, we have this conversation that we want to have with our constituents. How do we get it out to them? And it's a complete, we've used the phrase throughout this last year, pivot, don't replicate. Mm-hmm. And very much, I think that's what we've tried to live by and what we've tried to tell clients to live by, because it's not a postponement. It's a fundamental rethinking. And even when things open back up, I think it'll be a fundamental rethinking forever.
I think you're right. I don't know if we've copyrighted that, pivot, don't replicate just yet.
Oh, I shouldn't have said it.
I feel like at some point we really should. But what was interesting in the very beginning, when we started talking about this with folks, they didn't really understand what we meant about turning it into a show. And don't you mean just a Zoom? And one of the challenges, I think, actually was people looked at it and said, well, I can just do this on Zoom. Right, I can just, especially in the beginning phase, I would say, phase one for us, it was trying to convince people that they should be doing this. And a lot of folks thought, well, I can't spend any money right now, or I shouldn't be spending any money right now. And two, I can just do this over Zoom, right? And that was one of the things that I think the conversations we had with folks is that, yes, you can do a lot of things over Zoom, but if you want to take it to the next level, you're going to need a little help and playing videos. And that's one of the conversations we have with a lot of folks, I feel like, is, yeah, you could do a lot of things over Zoom. Yes, you can have one-on-one conversations or great, just dynamic conversations as a whole. But if you truly want it to engage your audience more than just what people are saying and really have them feel like they're a part of a show, and that's the way we kind of pitch it, is you do need to step your game up in a sense. And one of the things that I always kind of look at are the people that, if you want to play video, anybody that's been on a call, whether it's, a family reunion, a call with your mom and dad, or a big large scale event, if you've tried to play a video through Zoom, it's a pain in the neck. Well, let us take care of it. Let other people that do it take care of it. So it just rolls seamless. And I feel like that kind of shifted. I don't know what month it was, but maybe you call it, August, September, where people started realizing, oh my goodness, I can't do this anymore on my own. I need help with this. So at what point do you start to feel like it kind of happened for you? Or for us, I should say.
No, absolutely. I think there's a lot to unpack there. And you mentioned like the idea of playing back a video and how people are considering these shows, considering them as shows in the first place. And I think the idea of even incorporating assets other than just people sitting there live. Think about the program that we put together today, right? There's an interview with the journalist. There's a tour of the office. There's some news items. There's stuff that's live and there's stuff that's pre-produced. And I think even just having the conversation with some of the people we were working with to create events and talk to them about, yeah, you're going to produce a live event. There's going to be a portion of it that's live, but it doesn't have to be completely live. You can do elements of this in advance, and that allows you to really expand the scope of what's possible, including, really light, socially distanced in-person shoots, or collecting footage, sending out kits to people to collect footage in a vlog style format, or panel discussions for people who might not be available the day of the show. A whole range of things that, it's not just live, but it starts with thinking of it as a show. And, you went out a couple of months ago onto Route 1 with a sign that said a Zoom meeting is not a virtual event or something of that nature. And I think that was something that's important for people to recognize. Every single person who's in the workforce right now is spending their whole day on video calls. And, the last thing that they're going to want to do in order to engage with your fundraising gala or your event or, your conference, your trade show, whatever it is just be there in what feels like more work. So, it can be delivered to people in a platform like Zoom or one of these other great virtual event platforms or via a streaming player on your website. But what you deliver to them can't feel like work. It's got to feel like something different and interesting and engaging. And that's what works. I think we've seen that shift from a lot of people. And I do think that the light bulb moment happened for a lot of folks, this summer and fall when they actually try to do these events and they say, wow, people responded really positively to this. And I think that's ultimately, the best thing you can see is the proof is in the event itself. When people host one of these and they see people respond positively, that's the best possible feeling. And that's the best, use case, right? Mm-hmm.
Definitely is. Now, we actually just got a great comment from Kyle McNaught on our Facebook page. He's watching it live right now. And Kyle said, people are forgetting that it's about the audience. Companies are happy being able to just do video and are missing the big picture. And I couldn't agree more. It really is, it's what we start every single conversation, right? Like people say, well, where should I be broadcasting this to? Should I be putting it on Zoom? We say, where's your audience live? It might be in Zoom. And if they're in Zoom, we're happy to, stream a show into Zoom to make it look professional. But it goes back to one of the best quotes I think we saw over the summer. We were working with a conference that they put on a big show in Boston. It's a tour. I think it's typically a 2-day conference. So we've been there on site for their kind of 2-day in-person event. And the CEO of the company brought up the fact that they spend, a big chunk of money on the in-person event for about 400 industry professionals to come to Boston, wine and dine, be together, and learn from other industry professionals. Well, they obviously couldn't do that last year. And the net result was they spent really a minuscule fraction of what they typically would have spent. And instead of reaching 400, they reached upwards of 3,000. So it did increase their reach at the end of the day for the live event. And yes, there was a lot of work and man hours that went into it, but that was still in the beginning stages of it. And that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about now as we kind of move forward. And, I don't want to, you and I could talk till we're blue in the face about this, I'm sure. But going forward, kind of the approach to pivoting, not replicating, and not thinking that a switch is just going to be flicked and we're going to be able to have these in-person events. At the end of the day, there's still going to be that virtual component to it that, yes, nothing's going to, take the place of the handshake or the hug of in-person networking or in-person marketing. But I will say, you might say, well, yeah, I can reach those 400 people. We're going to have great handshakes. Maybe I could spend a little bit more and still reach, that 3,000 people, right? So I think there's that hybrid approach. I'm just kind of curious to get kind of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the right time to have the conversation because I think I saw a news article earlier today that
right, 12%, right?
Announcing some reopening plans. I think 12% capacity at sports sports arenas and stadiums, it's great. I'm all for it. Listen, there's tremendous value in in-person events. There's a reason that it's a staple of pretty much every single industry. I don't think there's any denying that. I think the point is that there's always going to be people who can't come to an in-person event, whether it's for budget reasons or for family reasons, childcare or travel, or, they just don't have the time, or you just have a capacity. You mentioned an event, an in-person event in Boston, capacity of 400 people. You're not reaching everybody you possibly could. So there's still lots and lots of value. And there was plenty of forward-thinking clients we were working with before COVID who were streaming portions of, their events and trade shows and conferences as well to reach that audience in different ways. So I think getting back to trade shows and conferences and galas and all this, it's just thinking about who is your audience that's in, getting back to the audience point, who's your audience that's in person and creating a great in-person event for them. And then who's the audience that's at home that you can reach, who can't be there in person for whatever reason, and what should you try to create for them? What kind of a program do you want to put together for those people? And that's where you start from. And it might be a quote unquote pregame show, a red carpet show. Think about the Oscars, right? The Oscars puts on a broadcast. There's a huge in-person event. And of course, the event itself is live streamed, but there's a red carpet show for the people who really care about it to hear more from the nominees and the celebrities. And your gala or your fundraising event, whatever it is, can have that component of your event as well. We've done a lot of, like I mentioned, a lot of forward-thinking clients have done this over the years, whether it's fully streaming out your event, whether it's, doing a pregame show or some kind of a companion piece where, maybe a speaker gets up on stage and delivers an address, but then, there's a debrief and they can come sit down with one of your thought leaders and have a conversation where the audience who's watching at home can ask questions. There's a ton of different options for it. And audience is the right word. What are the people who can't be at your event and who are at home but still are interested in your brand? What do they want to see? Start from there and make it for them and make it happen, because it's all possible. It's just a matter of figuring out what they want.
Yeah, and make it fun, make it interesting, make it engaging, right? Like that's the other thing. I also, going back to what we were talking about before about talking about your audience, the audience that's in person might have a different experience than what they're seeing at home as well, right? So to your point about having, live streaming an entire event, sitting down to watch someone's presentation for 45 minutes in person really isn't that out of the norm. Sitting down for 45 minutes to watch someone just throw PowerPoint slides up on screen while you're at your house can drive you crazy. And if you try to do a full day of that, it's mind-numbing in a sense. So you definitely have to rethink as a whole and try to create the different experiences for where those audiences actually are at that moment in time. You can't, you talk about replicating. You can't replicate what's going on, even when we get to the hybrid, what's happening exactly on site for what people are getting in person. And we've worked with a few event organizers too, and some of the things that they've done that have just been fantastic are offering gift boxes, right? For the folks that are at home. We've had a few events now that whether it was an internal sales meeting versus a big gala, right? If it was a big gala, they had, champagne toast in glasses. And when they had an internal sales meeting, for the folks that were in Brazil, they had beer and wine. And they had, for the folks that were in the US, they had, brand new headphones, which, we got a pair of those headphones. They're awesome. So they have to be watching them.
Cold brew in a nice little can too, right? Like
exactly.
That's what you can do. And
so again, make it special, and don't just think of the video production part of it. It's just that. It's one part of it, right? I think we're starting to see people step the game up even more to just make the events themselves just special, the same way you do it in site, right? You'd have great video walls. You'd hand out, whether it's a foam finger at a basketball game or a t-shirt, it's, handing out water bottles on site. You want to kind of have similar experiences that just make it feel special for people that are attending virtually as well. It's that same mentality.
Don't make it feel like work. Right?
Yeah.
Make it special. Don't make it feel like work. Nobody wants to go to work.
Exactly.
Right? Don't make it feel like work.
But we have to go to work, Phil. We have people that work for us now, so we have
make
to
work fun also if you
Yeah, exactly. Well, with that in mind, I'm going to let you go so you can get back to work because I got to do the exact same thing. So good stuff, Phil. Thank you as always. I'll talk to you in a couple minutes anyways.
Sounds great. Thanks, Tyler.
No, awesome. Well, big thank you to Phil. And, that's really just going to do it for the show today. And first and foremost, I just want to say thank you to you for the folks that were watching and commenting. Awesome. can't say thank you enough. Now, again, this is our first time back here in a while, so let us know what you want to see more of. Let's have different topics and things like that. Now, we're also going to be kind of updating things as we go in terms of the look and feel, different segments, and we just want to have some fun with it, and hopefully it becomes a learning experience for other people, and really hope that we can highlight other brands and other people that are doing some cool things in the space itself. Now, I also want to remind you, though, that we are going to be posting some of these individual clip segments, some of the behind-the-scene footage, to our Facebook page, Instagram account, LinkedIn, and, of course, our blog over at 5toolproductions.com. And stay tuned. That website should be updated hopefully sooner rather than later. It's on me to talk with the developer. So we'll get that uploaded and updated for you guys shortly. So anyways, that'll do it for all the folks out back that worked hard. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.